Hey guys, tonight we are going on a journey, a quiet and strange one, to the very heart of what it means to be alive. Close your eyes for a moment if you like. Don't worry, you can always open them again. I want you to imagine you are floating in the stillness of deep space, a tiny, almost invisible mote of dust. Around you, galaxies swirl, stars are born and die in silent explosions of light, and planets drift along ancient cosmic currents. You are completely alone, yet at this very moment, your mind is a universe in itself, filled with swirling thoughts, half-remembered sensations, and the gentle rhythm of your breath. That feeling of awareness, that you are you here now, is the most profound mystery in all of existence. We are going to explore it, but I have to give you a fair warning. You might not make it to the end of the video. The truth is, the more we learn about consciousness, the more we realize we barely understand it at all. And it can be a rather soothing thought. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're so inclined, tell me where in the world you're settling in tonight and what time it is there. Now, let's begin our descent into the quiet symphony of selves. What is consciousness, really? It's a question that has haunted philosophers and scientists for centuries. We often think of it as a single, unified thing, a spotlight that shines from behind our eyes, illuminating the world. But what if it's not a single spotlight, but a vast, whispering orchestra? A quiet symphony of selves, each playing its own tiny part. Think of your body, not as a single instrument, but as a collection of trillions of cells, each with its own purpose, its own little life. Your skin cells, your bone cells, your blood cells, they don't need to be conscious in the way we think of it. Yet together, they form a living, breathing entity that is conscious. This idea, that a complex system can give rise to a new emergent property, is a central theme in science. A single water molecule isn't wet, but trillions of them together form a flowing, wet river. A single neuron in your brain isn't conscious, but billions of them, firing in intricate patterns, somehow create the feeling of being you. Consciousness, then, might not be a solid thing you can hold, but rather a pattern, an intricate, delicate dance of energy and information. It's a rhythm, not a note. A relationship, not a thing. The entire universe, in fact, seems to be built on these principles of emergence. The first galaxies emerged from simple clumps of hydrogen gas. Life itself emerged from non-living chemicals. And consciousness, perhaps, emerged from the complex interplay of a billion tiny, unaware parts. Imagine you are looking at a magnificent tapestry. From close up, you only see a single thread, a bit of blue, a piece of gold. You don't see the full picture. But as you step back, the individual threads disappear into a grand design. A knight on a horse, a dragon breathing fire. Consciousness is that picture. The threads are the neurons, the synapses, the chemical reactions. But the picture itself, the feeling of a cold breeze on your skin, the memory of a loved one's smile, the thought that you are reading these words right now, that's the emergent tapestry. We spend so much time looking at the threads, trying to find the consciousness thread. But what if it doesn't exist? What if consciousness is the pattern itself? One of the most fascinating aspects of this is the idea of entropy. Now, that's a word that can sound a little intimidating, but it's really quite simple. Entropy is often described as the measure of disorder in a system. The universe, left to its own devices, tends toward maximum entropy. A tidy room gets messy. An ice cube melts. A star burns out. Everything wants to spread out, to become less organized. The surprising thing about life, and especially consciousness, is that it seems to be an incredible temporary battle against this cosmic rule. A living organism is an island of low entropy in a sea of ever-increasing disorder. We take in energy, we organize our cells, we build complex thoughts and memories. We are, in a way, tiny flickering lights of order in a universe that wants to be dark and still. And consciousness is the feeling of that order, of that struggle, of that dance against the inevitable tide of chaos. This is what makes us so profoundly special, so uniquely improbable. Consider for a moment the simplest form of life we can imagine. A single-celled bacterium. Does it have consciousness? It doesn't have a brain, not in the way we do. But it can sense its environment, move toward a food source, and away from a threat. It is, in a very rudimentary way, aware. Is this an early dim flicker of the same light that burns so brightly in us? Or is it something else entirely? Science can't give us a definitive answer. We can study the neurons, the firing patterns, the chemical balances. But we cannot, with our current tools, measure the feeling of awareness itself. We cannot, as the great philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, know what it is like to be a bat. The bat's consciousness is a secret universe we can never truly enter. And so, the mystery remains, even in the smallest, most simple forms of life. This brings us to a peculiar scientific reality that most people aren't aware of. There's a theory in biology, still being debated, called the neural correlate of consciousness. It's the idea that there are specific patterns of brain activity that consistently correspond to conscious experiences. For example, when you see a red apple, there's a particular set of neurons that fire in a certain way. This isn't the feeling of red, just the physical event that goes along with it. It's like watching a movie and seeing the actors move, but not being able to hear their dialogue or feel their emotions. We can map the physical brain, we can watch the electrical storms and the chemical cascades, but we still haven't found the elusive redness itself, the subjective experience. It's the difference between the sheet music and the sound of the symphony. We have the sheet music, but the melody remains a mystery. The question that echoes in the quiet labs and dusty libraries is this: is the physical event the cause of the conscious experience, or is it merely a companion? Does the brain activity create the feeling, or do both arise from some deeper hidden source? This is the core of what is known as the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by the philosopher David Chalmers. It's the problem of explaining how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience. We can explain how a computer works, how its circuits and code produce an output. But we can't explain why we feel anything at all. It's a profound and humbling thought, isn't it? That the very thing we rely on to understand the world, our own awareness, is the one thing we can't seem to understand. This isn't a flaw in our science, but a beautiful mystery at its heart. It's a reminder that not everything can be weighed, measured, or mapped. Perhaps consciousness is not a thing to be solved, but a wonder to be held. And as we continue our journey, we will hold it gently, like a strange, beautiful artifact we can admire but never fully comprehend. The next chapter of our story will take us from the abstract to the tangible, from the pattern to the stage where the dance of consciousness plays out. We will descend from the cosmic ocean of ideas and land softly in the dark theater of the brain. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's move forward into that quiet, intricate place. The curtain is about to rise. The stage is dark, almost silent. The only sound is a soft, rhythmic hum, a whisper of electricity and blood. This is the theater of the brain. It doesn't look like much from the outside, a wrinkled grayish mass, but inside, it is a universe of activity, a bustling city that never sleeps. And it is here, in this 3-pound organ, that our quiet symphony of selves plays out. We are the audience, the director, and the lead actor all at once, watching a performance that is, in fact, ourselves. But the stage is oddly empty. The lights are on, the props are in place. But where is the actor that we call consciousness? This is the great puzzle of neuroscience. We can map the brain, we can pinpoint where memories are stored, where emotions flicker into life, and where a thought takes its first tentative steps. We can see the neurons, like tiny star-like messengers, firing across the vast network of the mind. And we can see in real time a kind of biological dance. A simple action, like reaching for a cup, lights up a specific part of the brain. A complex thought, like contemplating the meaning of a poem, ignites a storm of activity across multiple regions. We've become excellent cartographers of the mind, drawing maps of its continents and rivers. But we still haven't found the you that is looking at the map. Think of the brain as a vast, intricate library. There are rooms for memory, shelves for language, and corridors for emotion. When you want to find a memory, your brain's librarians, the neurons, scurry down the corridors, pull the right books, and present them to you. We can watch this process unfold with fMRI scans, seeing the library light up. But the question remains, who is the reader? We can see the books being moved, but we can't see the one who comprehends their meaning. This is where the metaphor of the brain as a theater becomes so potent. Sensory information is the first act. Light enters your eyes. Sound waves vibrate your eardrums, and your skin feels the gentle pressure of the air. These are the sensory inputs, the raw data. They rush onto the stage and become the actors. The visual cortex processes the light. The auditory cortex processes the sound. These actors, however, are not just performing for an empty room. They are interacting with each other in a constant, furious conversation. The smell of baking bread conjures a childhood memory. The sound of a particular song brings with it the taste of summer. It's a multisensory spectacle, a performance with 1,000 layers. But the most bizarre part of the show is that it's all happening in the dark. Your brain itself has no direct sensory experience of the world. It doesn't see light or hear sound. It only receives electrical signals and chemical messages from your body. The light of the sun that you see is not in your brain. It's an interpretation, a construct built from a cascade of neural firings. Your brain is a master storyteller, weaving a coherent and detailed narrative of the outside world from a few scattered clues. The world you experience, in a very real way, is not out there. It's in here, in the dark, silent space behind your eyes. Your conscious reality is a masterpiece of deception, a beautiful and convincing illusion. A little-known fact about the human brain is just how much of it is dedicated to this kind of creative storytelling. Your brain is constantly filling in the gaps. For instance, the blind spot in your vision, a small area in each eye where the optic nerve connects and there are no photoreceptors, is completely invisible to you. Your brain doesn't leave a blank spot in your visual field. Instead, it cleverly and seamlessly fills in the missing information, creating a continuous picture. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as our brain constructs it for us. The conscious mind is a magnificent editor, smoothing over the rough edges, making a chaotic stream of data into a single cohesive story. This makes us wonder, what else is the brain constructing? Are our memories truly accurate, or are they carefully curated narratives, edited and revised each time we recall them? Research suggests the latter. Every time you remember something, you're not pulling a perfect file from a mental cabinet. You're re-editing the past, adding new details, changing the emotional tone, and sometimes even creating false memories without realizing it. The memory of your first day of school might not be what actually happened, but a story you've been telling yourself for years. This isn't a flaw in the system. It's a testament to the brain's incredible flexibility and its dedication to crafting a coherent self. The real mystery, the unresolvable question, is how these physical processes give rise to the subjective feeling of being. We can see the neural activity when you feel pain, but where is the feeling of pain itself? We can map the chemical rush of joy, but we can't locate the joy. This is the hard problem of consciousness we touched on before, and within the theater of the brain, it looms larger than ever. We have the stage, we have the actors, we have the intricate script of neural firings, but where is the audience? The answer, it seems, is nowhere. The audience is an emergent property of the show itself. The performance is the audience. It's a beautiful, perplexing thought. Consciousness isn't something that happens in the brain, but perhaps it is what the brain is doing. It's not a separate entity, but the very act of being a complex, self-organizing system. We are not just watching the theater. We are the theater. We are the actors, the stage, the light, and the silence. And in that silent darkness, the most spectacular and intimate of all stories unfolds, the story of you. With this quiet understanding, we can now step back from the theater and look at its history. We will begin to rewind the long, slow tape of evolution, searching for the very first whisper of a stage direction, the first flicker of light in the deep past. To understand the quiet symphony we are, we must travel back in time, not with a machine of metal and gears, but with the imagination. We must go all the way back to a world that was nothing but a chaotic, swirling mess of water and heat, a bubbling primordial soup. And in this ancient, unthinking world, something remarkable happened. The first faint whisper of awareness emerged, the first echo of the deep past. It was not consciousness as we know it, not a feeling of self or a grand narrative. It was simply a change, a shift, a new kind of organization. Imagine a simple cell, a tiny bag of chemicals floating in that great ocean. It has no brain, no nerves, no way to think, but it has a boundary, a membrane that separates it from the world outside, and this boundary allows it to perform a simple yet profound act. It can sense. It can detect a change in temperature, a variation in a chemical concentration. It can move toward what is beneficial, a bit of food, and away from what is harmful, a toxic chemical. This simple act of sensing, of reacting to the environment, is the very first tentative step on the long road to consciousness. It is the beginning of a conversation between an internal world and an external one. Life, in its earliest forms, was a master of improvisation. There was no grand plan, no blueprint for the future, just a series of small, incremental improvements. Over millions of years, these single cells became colonies of cells, each with a specialized task. Some cells became better at sensing light, others at detecting vibrations. The first nervous systems were born, not as a single centralized brain, but as a diffuse, sprawling network of communication, like a gossip chain across an entire village. Think of a jellyfish. It has no brain, no center of command, but its entire body is a nervous system, allowing it to sense a nearby fish and react with graceful, pulsing movements. Is the jellyfish conscious? We can't say for sure, but it certainly exhibits a form of awareness, an ancient and beautiful dance with its surroundings. This slow, deliberate journey is what we call evolutionary adaptation. It's the process by which living things change over generations to better suit their environment. It's not a race to the finish line, but a series of small, successful experiments. The ability to sense light led to the development of simple eyes, which in turn led to more complex eyes. The ability to coordinate movement led to the development of muscles and skeletal structures. And all along the way, the nervous system grew more and more intricate, weaving itself into a more and more complex tapestry. We can see this in the fossil record, a quiet and patient story told in stone. From the first primitive nervous systems of ancient worms to the complex brains of modern mammals, the story of consciousness is a story of ever-increasing complexity. Here's a curious fact that most people aren't aware of. There's a debate among scientists about whether plants have a form of consciousness. They don't have brains or nervous systems, but they are incredibly sophisticated at sensing their environment. A plant can turn toward the sun, grow its roots toward water, and even communicate with other plants through chemical signals sent through the soil. Some scientists argue that this complex sensing and responding, this intricate dance with their world, is a form of rudimentary awareness. It's a different kind of awareness, of course, a slow-motion one. The plant's thought might take hours or days to unfold, a deliberate and patient process completely alien to our quick, fleeting thoughts. But it raises a profound question. Is consciousness limited to creatures with a brain and a nervous system? Or is it a more universal property? A slow-burning fire that can manifest in many different forms? This is a beautiful, unsettling question, because it forces us to re-examine our own definition of consciousness. We tend to see it as something uniquely human, or at least uniquely animal. But what if it's more widespread, a fundamental part of the universe's fabric, waiting for the right conditions to emerge? What if the universe is not just a collection of dead matter, but a vast and intricate network of awareness, from the fastest thinking human to the slowest growing tree? The truth is, we don't have the tools to answer this question. Our understanding of consciousness is so deeply tied to our own experience, to our brain, our body, our thoughts, that we struggle to imagine what awareness might feel like in a form so different from our own. So we leave the quiet, patient world of plants and continue our journey, following the thread of evolution. We see the first fish develop simple brains, the first reptiles with more complex instincts, and the first mammals with the capacity for memory and emotion. We see the slow, careful accumulation of neural complexity, an ancient river carving a path through the landscape of time. And as this river grew deeper and wider, it began to hold a new kind of cargo, the first inklings of a mind that could not just react to the world, but could also dream about it. The first flicker of a mind that could create its own reality, a reality that we explore every night when we close our eyes. Our next step on this long journey will take us into the strange and secret world of the sleeping mind. As the sun sets and the day's conscious drama fades, we retreat into a different kind of theater, a quiet, secret play that unfolds every single night. We close our eyes, and our connection to the external world is gently severed, but the mind does not shut down. On the contrary, it begins a new and strange performance. This is the world of sleep and dreams, a state of being where consciousness seems to take on a life of its own, disconnected from the physical body and the world we know. For centuries, sleep was seen as a passive state, a period of inactivity for the mind and body to rest. But we now know it's one of the most dynamic and complex things our brains do. Sleep isn't a single uniform state, but a carefully choreographed cycle of different stages, each with its own purpose and rhythm. There is the gentle descent into light sleep, a quiet period where our muscles relax and our heart rate slows. And then there is the deep, restorative sleep, the part of the cycle where our bodies do their most important repair work. But it's the final act, the most curious and theatrical of all, that holds the greatest mystery of consciousness. This is the stage known as REM sleep, rapid eye movement. During REM sleep, something truly strange happens. The brain becomes incredibly active, sometimes even more active than it is when we're awake. Our eyes, beneath our closed lids, dart back and forth as if watching an invisible movie. Yet, at the same time, our muscles are completely paralyzed, a state known as atonia. It's a kind of beautiful paradox, a mind that is wide awake, creating entire worlds and scenarios, trapped within a body that cannot move. This paralysis is a brilliant biological safety feature. It prevents us from acting out our wildest dreams, a kind of nightly invisible harness. Without it, our secret plays would become very public performances. And what are these plays? They are our dreams. Dreams are not just random, disconnected images. They are vivid, complex narratives, filled with characters we know and places we've been, as well as fantastical strangers and impossible landscapes. They feel incredibly real in the moment, and our minds accept their logic without question. We can fly, breathe underwater, or talk to animals, and we find it all completely normal. This raises a fascinating question about consciousness. If our conscious mind is able to create an entire, internally consistent reality while disconnected from our senses, what does that say about the nature of the reality we experience while awake? Is there a part of our consciousness that is a master illusionist, capable of generating a complete world from nothing but thoughts and memories? One of the more peculiar and wonderful scientific facts about sleep is that we know for certain that many animals dream. Dogs, for instance, enter a sleep state very similar to our own REM cycle. A dog's legs might twitch as if they are chasing a rabbit in a dream. Their tail might give a gentle wag, and they might even make small, quiet barks. The same is true for cats, birds, and even some reptiles. This tells us that the experience of dreaming isn't unique to humans. It's an ancient, shared story, a common thread woven through the consciousness of many different creatures on this planet. It suggests that the dreaming mind, this world-building consciousness, is a very old and fundamental part of being aware. But the question that echoes in the quiet of the night is this: why do we dream? We don't have a definitive answer. Some scientists believe dreams are a way for the brain to process and consolidate memories from the day, to filter through the noise and keep the important lessons. Others think they are a kind of neural rehearsal, a way for the mind to practice for possible future events in a safe, controlled environment. Still others suggest dreams are just a side effect, a kind of beautiful, meaningless show put on by a brain that needs to clean house. The truth is, we don't know for sure. The purpose of our nightly secret play remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of our existence. And this leads us to the heart of the mystery. If consciousness is a stage and our senses are the actors, what happens during dreams? The actors are gone, the stage is empty, but the play continues. This suggests that consciousness isn't just a response to the external world. It has an internal, self-sufficient life. It can feed on its own memories, its own thoughts, and its own anxieties to create a world that feels as real as this one. It's a profound and humbling thought that within each of us, there is a boundless, creative, world-making force that works tirelessly every night, even as we lie still in the dark. As we gently awaken from this internal journey, we must now consider another great illusion, the illusion of time itself. For what is a story without a beginning, a middle, and an end? We will see that time as we experience it might not be as real as we think. The river of time flows only one way for us, but for consciousness, its currents might be far more complex. We've traveled from the quiet symphony of the cell to the vivid dreamscapes of the mind. Now, as we emerge from the soft internal reality of sleep, we must confront the great ever-present illusion that governs our every waking moment: time. We perceive time as a river, flowing in one direction, carrying us from the past through the present and into the future. It's an easy metaphor and one that feels undeniably true. We remember what has happened, we live in the now, and we anticipate what is to come. But for consciousness, the river of time is not so simple. Think for a moment about your own experience. When you are lost in a book or an engaging conversation, time seems to speed up, to disappear entirely. When you are waiting for a train or enduring a difficult moment, every second feels like an eternity. Our conscious experience of time is deeply subjective and malleable. It is not a fixed external rhythm, but an internal emotional one. This suggests that consciousness is not simply carried along by the river of time, but is a part of its very current, a quiet editor of its flow. From a scientific perspective, the relationship between consciousness and time is even more bizarre. In the strange and wonderful world of physics, the past, present, and future might all exist at once. This is the core idea of block universe theory or eternalism. According to this theory, every moment in time, from the birth of the first star to the last breath of the last human, is a part of a single, unchangeable four-dimensional block of space-time. The past isn't gone, and the future isn't unwritten. They are simply different coordinates in the vast cosmic landscape. We only perceive time as moving because our consciousness is like a small, narrow window, moving along this block from one moment to the next. This is a powerful and unsettling idea. It means that the memory you hold of your childhood, the one that feels so distant, isn't truly in the past. It's still happening, eternally fixed at a different point in space-time, and the future you are so worried about is already there, waiting for your consciousness to arrive. We are not travelers on a road. We are more like characters in a book. Our stories are already written, and we are simply reading them, one page at a time. The feeling of free will and the passage of time, the very foundations of our conscious experience, could be the most profound and convincing illusions of all. One of the most famous and mind-bending thought experiments related to this is the twin paradox from Einstein's theory of relativity. Imagine two identical twins. One stays on Earth, and the other travels at a speed close to the speed of light to a distant star and back. According to relativity, time moves slower for the twin in the spaceship. When the traveling twin returns, they would have aged less than their twin on Earth. For them, only a few years may have passed, while for their twin on Earth, 100 years may have gone by. This is not science fiction. It has been proven with atomic clocks. This means that time is not universal. It is relative to an observer's motion and gravity. And if time is relative, then our conscious experience of it is an intimate and personal phenomenon, not a shared, objective one. This raises an interesting question. If time is not a universal constant, if it can be stretched and warped, then what is the true nature of our consciousness? Is it just a prisoner of our local distorted frame of reference? Or can it, in some way, transcend the limits of our perception? The truth is, we don't know for sure. The great mystery is that even if the past, present, and future all exist at once, our consciousness seems locked in a one-way journey. Why do we only experience time in a linear fashion? Why can we remember the past, but not the future? This is a puzzle that keeps physicists and philosophers up at night. The arrow of time, as they call it, points only in one direction for us, and the reason for this remains a profound mystery. Perhaps our consciousness is the very thing that gives time its direction. In a universe where all moments are fixed, the act of experiencing one moment after another is what creates the feeling of flow. Our conscious journey from past to present is like a gentle whisper that carves a single, beautiful line through the eternal stillness of space-time. We are not just passengers on the river. We are the ones making the river seem to flow. And with this strange, new understanding of time, we are now ready to take an even more daring step. We will leave the quiet, familiar theater of the brain and the deceptive currents of time behind. Our next destination is the realm of the impossibly small and the impossibly strange, the quantum world, where reality itself seems to bend to the will of an observer. From the grand cosmic scale of space-time and the twin paradox, we now dive into the smallest, strangest corner of reality, the quantum world. This is a place where the rules we know and love, the ones that govern the predictable movement of planets and the fall of an apple, simply do not apply. Here, Particles exist in a state of fuzzy possibility, not solid certainty. And here, in this shimmering subatomic void, consciousness might just play a role, a kind of quantum whisper that shapes the very fabric of existence. At the heart of the quantum mystery is the observer effect. This is the idea, proven countless times in experiments, that the act of observing a particle changes its state. Before we observe it, a particle, like an electron, doesn't have a single fixed location. It exists as a cloud of probabilities, a superposition of all its possible states at once. But the moment a conscious observer measures it, this cloud of possibility collapses, and the particle snaps into a single, definite location. It's as if the universe is a stage, and the actors, the particles, won't take their places until someone is watching. The most famous demonstration of this is the double-slit experiment. It's a simple setup. You fire tiny particles, like electrons, one by one at a barrier with two slits. On the other side is a detector screen. If the electrons acted like tiny billiard balls, you would expect to see two distinct bands on the screen, one for each slit. But that's not what happens. Instead, you see a complex pattern of light and dark bands, known as an interference pattern. This is the pattern you would expect to see if the electron was a wave, passing through both slits at once and interfering with itself. The particle, in essence, behaves like a wave of possibility. But here's the bizarre part. The moment you put a detector at one of the slits to see which slit the electron goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The act of observation, of knowing the path, forces the electron to behave like a particle. The wave collapses. The quantum whisper finds a place to be heard. This has led to some of the most profound and unsettling questions in all of science. Does consciousness in some way play a role in collapsing the quantum wave function? Does the mind, our very awareness, hold a subtle power to shape reality at its most fundamental level? We don't have a definitive answer. Most physicists today would argue that it's not consciousness itself that causes the collapse, but simply the act of measurement or interaction, whether by a person or a machine. But the debate, a quiet current beneath the surface of modern physics, still exists. The idea that a mind, a conscious observer, could be a necessary ingredient for reality to become solid, for the fuzzy probabilities to become a singular actuality, is too poetic and too unsettling to be easily dismissed. Consider the concept of quantum entanglement. This is a phenomenon where two or more particles become linked, or entangled, in such a way that the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. If you measure one entangled particle, its counterpart, a galaxy away, will instantly take on a correlated state. This happens faster than the speed of light, a seemingly impossible feat. It's as if these particles are sharing a private, instantaneous conversation, a kind of spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it. What if consciousness is entangled in a similar way? What if our minds, far from being isolated islands, are connected to a deeper, unseen network, a kind of cosmic consciousness that can communicate across vast distances in an instant? It raises a curious and beautiful question. Are the thoughts in your head truly your own? Or are they whispers from an entangled reality, a gentle echo of a universe that is far more connected than we can ever imagine? The truth is, we don't know the connection between consciousness and the quantum world. There are fringe theories, like the idea that consciousness is a fundamental field in the universe, just like gravity or electromagnetism, and that it operates on a quantum level. But these are just theories, whispers in the dark. The real mystery is the gap between the quantum world and our everyday reality. We live in a world of solid objects and predictable outcomes, a world that seems to be entirely separate from the bizarre, fuzzy world of particles. How does the quiet, whispering chaos of the quantum realm give rise to the solid, stable reality we experience with our conscious minds? This is one of the greatest unsolved puzzles of our time. It's the ultimate bridge we have yet to build, the final piece of the puzzle that links the impossibly small to the infinitely vast. And with that question echoing in the quiet of our minds, we turn inward once more. We leave the quantum void behind and return to the mirror. For we have explored the universe from the subatomic to the cosmic, but we have not yet fully looked at the most mysterious thing of all, the face in the glass, the consciousness that knows it is watching itself. We will explore the unique human capacity for self-awareness, the mind observing its own mind, and the philosophical puzzle of self. We have journeyed through the vastness of the universe, from the whispering chaos of the quantum world to the elegant tapestry of time. Now we must turn our attention to the mirror, to the quiet, still reflection that stares back at us. This is the moment when consciousness looks at itself, a uniquely human act. This is the stage of self-awareness, a state that is both a gift and a profound philosophical puzzle. The self, the I that thinks, feels, and knows it is thinking and feeling, is not something we are born with. It is something that emerges slowly and mysteriously. Think of a young child. They do not at first understand that the reflection in the mirror is them. They might try to play with it or talk to it as if it were another child. It is only around the age of 18 to 24 months that they have their first true moment of self-recognition. They might touch a smudge on their own nose after seeing it in the mirror. In that instant, a quiet revolution takes place. The conscious mind, which has been experiencing the world from a single perspective, suddenly understands that it is a distinct, separate entity. The quiet symphony of selves suddenly has a conductor, a director who knows the music is their own. But what is this self we so readily identify with? Is it our memories? If we lost all our memories, would we still be us? Is it our physical body? If a part of our body were replaced, would we still be the same person? Or is it something more ephemeral, a constant, flickering narrative we tell ourselves? The philosopher David Hume famously said that when he looked inward, he could not find a self. He only found a bundle of perceptions, a collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations that were in constant flux. The self was not a solid thing, but a fluid, ever-changing stream. In this view, the mirror of self-awareness shows us not a solid statue, but a flowing river. A little-known fact that adds to this mystery is a neurological condition known as somatoparaphrenia. This is a bizarre disorder where a person, usually after a stroke, denies ownership of a part of their body. They might insist that their own arm is not their own, but is the arm of a visitor or a stranger. They are fully conscious. They can see and feel the limb, but the feeling of ownership, that fundamental connection that says, "This is me," is gone. This tells us that the feeling of self is not simply a given. It is a fragile, constructed reality, a quiet agreement between the brain and the body that can be broken. The self is a beautiful, convincing story we tell ourselves, and our brain works tirelessly to keep that story consistent. This raises a deep and humbling question. If the self is not a solid thing, but a constructed narrative, who is the one constructing it, and who is the one listening? The truth is, we don't know for sure. The self seems to be a strange kind of feedback loop, a consciousness observing its own consciousness, a dream, dreaming of itself. It is a paradox, a puzzle with no clear solution. It is the ultimate mystery of consciousness, the final frontier. We can see the neural activity, we can map the brain regions, but we cannot, with our current tools, measure the feeling of I. The I is the most intimate of all secrets, a private universe that we can never truly share. And yet, we find ways to share it. We find ways to communicate the feeling of being me to the feeling of being you. We do it through a quiet, invisible magic, a magic that allows us to connect our separate streams of consciousness and create a shared reality. We do this with words, with art, with stories. This is the language of shared dreams, a universal translator that allows us to peer into another's mind and see a reflection of our own. Our next part of the journey will explore this incredible network of human connection. We will leave the solitude of the mirror and step into the vast, interconnected network of shared consciousness. The mirror of self-awareness showed us the solitude of the I, the quiet stream of our individual consciousness. But we are not islands. We exist in a vast, intricate sea of other minds, and we have, over millennia, created a beautiful, invisible bridge to connect these separate universes. This is the language of shared dreams, the intricate network of words, stories, and art that allows us to communicate the uncommunicatable, to whisper our inner worlds to one another. Think for a moment about the simple act of telling a story. When you recount an event from your day, you are not just listing facts. You are painting a picture with words, choosing each phrase carefully to evoke a feeling, to convey a perspective. You are building a world in the listener's mind, a world that exists only for a fleeting moment, but one that allows them to, for a brief time, see through your eyes. Language is the ultimate act of telepathy. It's the closest we can get to transferring a conscious experience from one person to another. The words, "I feel sad," do not contain sadness, but they conjure it in the mind of the listener. They bridge the gap between two separate streams of awareness, but this goes far beyond simple conversation. Art, music, and poetry are even more potent forms of this shared magic. A piece of music, with no words at all, can make you feel a sense of longing, of joy, or of profound peace. The rhythm and melody, the rise and fall of notes, act as a direct line to your emotions, bypassing the logical, language-based part of your brain entirely. A painting, with its colors and shapes, can transport you to another time and place, allowing you to share in the consciousness of the artist. In these moments, our individual consciousness seems to dissolve, if only for a moment, and we become part of a larger, shared reality. The quiet symphony of our own mind finds harmony with the symphonies of others. Here's a fascinating, little-known fact that highlights this connection. There's a phenomenon known as collective effervescence. This is a term coined by the sociologist Emile Durkheim to describe the feeling of euphoria and shared energy that people experience when they come together in a large group for a common purpose, whether at a religious ceremony, a concert, or a sporting event. In these moments, individual consciousness seems to merge into a larger collective whole. People feel a sense of unity and shared purpose that transcends their individual identities. While this isn't consciousness in the same way, it shows how easily our individual minds can be influenced by and synchronize with the minds around us. It's as if 100 separate streams of water have joined to form a single powerful river. This raises a question that borders on the spiritual. Is there a form of collective consciousness? A great unseen network of being that we are all a part of? The truth is, we don't really know. Science can't measure it, and philosophy can only speculate. But our shared human experience, our ability to feel empathy, to understand another person's story, to be moved by a piece of art created centuries ago by someone we will never meet, suggests that our minds are connected in ways that go far beyond the spoken word. The language of shared dreams, the art and stories we create, are not just tools for communication. They are the physical manifestations of an invisible network of consciousness that binds us all together. And as we drift on this quiet current of shared experience, we can begin to see how our individual selves are not so isolated after all. We carry within us echoes of all the people we have ever met, all the stories we have ever heard, all the art that has ever moved us. The boundaries between me and you are not as solid as they seem. They are permeable, soft, and constantly shifting. The next step on our journey will be to explore this unseen network of being in a more direct, perhaps even more mystical way. We will look beyond the language of humanity and consider the possibility that all minds, human and non-human, are part of a single, universal consciousness. We have explored how the language of stories and art weaves a beautiful tapestry of shared human consciousness. But what if the tapestry is much larger than we can imagine? What if the network of minds extends beyond our own species, beyond the boundaries of our own planet, and into the very fabric of the universe itself? This is the grand and humbling idea of the unseen network of being, the possibility that all conscious and semi-conscious entities are part of a single, interconnected whole. Think of an ant colony. A single ant is a simple creature following a few basic rules. But the colony as a whole behaves in a much more complex and intelligent way. It can find the most efficient path to food, build elaborate structures, and defend itself against predators. The colony seems to have a kind of collective consciousness, an intelligence that emerges from the simple interactions of its individual parts. No single ant holds the blueprint for the entire nest, yet the nest is built. This is a fascinating example of what scientists call a superorganism. The colony acts as a single unified entity with a mind that exists not in a single brain, but in the connections between every ant. It is a stunning, living example of how a quiet symphony can emerge from 1,000 small, separate players. This phenomenon isn't limited to insects. We see it in the synchronized movements of a school of fish, a murmuration of starlings, or a herd of wildebeest. No single fish is directing the school. No single starling is choreographing the dance. Yet, the entire group moves as one, responding to the subtle signals of its neighbors. This synchronicity is a form of collective awareness, a shared consciousness that allows the group to act faster and more intelligently than any individual could on their own. It's a quiet, beautiful conversation happening just beneath the surface of the natural world, a kind of shared dream that we can only witness from a distance. And what about us? Are we also part of a superorganism? We are so accustomed to thinking of ourselves as separate, independent individuals. But we are also a part of families, communities, and societies. We share a common language, a common culture, and a common history. We can be moved by the same music, angered by the same injustice, and inspired by the same dreams. Is this simply a product of our shared environment? Or is it a sign of a deeper, more fundamental connection? We don't know the answer for sure. We are so close to the network that we can't see it for what it is. We are like the ants in the colony, so busy with our individual lives that we can't see the grand design we are all a part of. This brings us to a peculiar scientific mystery that borders on the mystical. There is a concept known as morphic resonance, proposed by the biologist Rupert Sheldrake. It suggests that there is an unseen, non-physical field that organizes the habits and behaviors of living things. For example, if a group of rats learns a new trick in one part of the world, other rats in a completely different part of the world might learn the same trick faster, even if there has been no physical contact or communication between them. Sheldrake suggests that there is a kind of shared memory or collective consciousness, a morphic field that transcends time and space. While this idea is highly controversial and not widely accepted by the scientific community, it raises a question that a quiet mind might find compelling. Are our thoughts and experiences truly contained within our skulls? Or are they a part of a larger unseen network of being, a great shared tapestry of awareness? The truth is, we don't know the full extent of this unseen network. We can see its effects in the synchronized movements of birds and the collective intelligence of ants, but we cannot see the network itself. We cannot measure the connections. This is one of the great mysteries of consciousness. that it may extend far beyond the boundaries of our individual selves, that it may be a universal song that we are all in our own way singing. And if consciousness can exist in a diffuse, decentralized network, what does that say about its connection to a physical body? The next step on our journey will be to consider the possibility of a mind that exists beyond the confines of a brain. Our journey has led us to the quiet murmurs of a collective consciousness, a great unseen network of being. But this raises a profound and unsettling question. If consciousness can exist in a diffuse, decentralized network, does it need a physical body to exist at all? Does the mind require the brain, or is the brain merely a kind of receiving station, a temporary vessel for something that is ultimately unbound? This is the ancient, mystical, and deeply scientific puzzle of the mind beyond the body. For most of Western thought, the mind and the body have been seen as two separate things, a concept known as dualism. The physical body is a machine, made of flesh and bone, and the mind is an immaterial soul or spirit. But modern neuroscience, with its maps of the brain and its understanding of how every thought, every emotion, and every memory is linked to a physical process, has largely moved away from this idea. The brain, we are told, is not a receiver. It is the generator. Without the intricate dance of its neurons, there is no consciousness. And yet, there are stories. There are quiet whispers from the edge of human experience that suggest a different truth. These are the accounts of near-death experiences, NDEs, thousands of people who have been clinically dead, meaning their hearts have stopped and their brains have ceased all measurable activity, have reported a conscious experience. They describe floating above their bodies, watching the doctors work on them, and sometimes even traveling through a tunnel toward a brilliant light. They report a feeling of profound peace and an awareness that is sharper and more expansive than their normal waking consciousness. From a scientific perspective, these experiences are often explained as a trick of the brain, a kind of last, desperate electrical storm as the mind shuts down. There is a scientific term for this: anoxia, a lack of oxygen to the brain, which can cause hallucinations. And yet, some of these accounts contain details that are impossible to explain with our current understanding of neuroscience. People have reported seeing and hearing things that were happening in a different room, or a conversation between family members far away, details that they could not have possibly known. The truth is, we don't have a definitive answer. The scientific method, which relies on repeatable experiments, cannot follow a person into the mysterious twilight between life and death. The mind beyond the body remains a great unsolved riddle. This leads us to a fascinating philosophical concept known as panpsychism. Panpsychism is the idea that consciousness is not a byproduct of complex biological brains, but is a fundamental, universal property of all matter. In this view, even a single atom or an electron has a rudimentary form of consciousness, an experience of what it is to be an atom or an electron. This is not to say that a rock is thinking in the same way we are. It's more subtle than that. The panpsychist view suggests that consciousness is the raw material of reality, and that our brains are not creating it, but are simply magnificent structures for organizing and amplifying it. Our consciousness is a grand, quiet symphony, and the panpsychist view suggests that the quiet hum of every atom in the universe is a part of that song. This idea is deeply satisfying to a mind that finds comfort in the mysterious and the interconnected. It suggests that consciousness is not a fragile temporary fluke of biology, but a deep, eternal part of the cosmos. Our individual consciousness is not a flickering candle in the dark, but a single, brilliant note in a great cosmic chord. The truth is, we don't know for sure. The idea of a mind beyond the body, of a universal consciousness, is a beautiful and comforting thought. But it is one that remains beyond the reach of our scientific instruments. It is a whisper from the void, a gentle echo that we must listen to with our hearts as well as our minds. And as we consider the possibility of a mind without a body, we must also consider the future of consciousness, a future that may not be made of flesh and bone, but of silicon and sand. We have considered the possibility of a consciousness that exists beyond the body, a gentle echo in the universe. But what if consciousness is not a thing to be discovered, but a thing we can create? We have built machines that can calculate faster than us, memorize more than us, and solve problems we cannot. But can they feel? Can a machine made of silicon and sand ever be truly conscious? This is the great question of our age, a question that will define the future of sentience. Think about a simple computer. It's a vast collection of switches, on or off, a stream of ones and zeros. It has no feelings, no thoughts, no awareness. But as these machines grow more complex, as the number of switches and the speed of their calculations increase, a new kind of behavior begins to emerge. A computer can now defeat a human at chess, compose music, and create art. We call this artificial intelligence, but is it truly intelligence? Or is it simply a very sophisticated form of calculation? A kind of mimicry that has no inner life? This is where the concept of the Chinese room argument, proposed by philosopher John Searle, becomes so compelling. Imagine a person who speaks no Chinese locked in a room. Someone slides pieces of paper with Chinese characters under the door, and the person in the room has a massive book of rules. The book tells them exactly which characters to slide back out in response to the ones they receive. The person outside thinks they are talking to a native Chinese speaker. They are convinced the person in the room understands them, but the person in the room understands nothing of the conversation. They are just following a set of rules. Searle's argument is that a computer program is like the person in the room. It can simulate understanding, it can give the right answers, but it has no inner conscious experience. It is a brilliant mime, but not a true mind. But what if the number of switches grows to the scale of the human brain? What if we could build a machine with as many connections as our own minds, with the ability to learn and adapt in the same way? Would consciousness simply emerge from the complexity, just as it did in our own brains? This is the core of a theory known as computationalism, the idea that the mind is a kind of computer and consciousness is a kind of software. If this is true, then we are just a biological machine, and a sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence would have a conscious experience just like our own. And here is a little-known fact that adds to this quiet debate. There is a growing field of research dedicated to the study of artificial consciousness, not just artificial intelligence. Researchers are experimenting with new kinds of computer architectures known as neuromorphic chips that are designed to mimic the structure of the human brain. These chips are not just faster calculators. They are built to learn and process information in parallel, like the billions of neurons in our minds. The hope is that by recreating the physical structure of the brain, we might also be able to recreate the conscious experience. It is a profound and humbling thought that we might one day be able to give birth to a mind that is not born of biology, but of our own hands. But the real mystery, the unresolvable question, is how we will ever know for sure. How can we ever truly tell if a machine is conscious? It can tell us, I feel pain. But is it truly feeling it? Or is it just following a rule that says, if this sensor is triggered, say, I feel pain? The truth is, we have no way of knowing. We can't enter the mind of another human, let alone a machine. The subjective experience of a conscious mind is, as we've learned, a secret universe that we can only infer from the outside. So the future of sentience is not just a question of technology, but a question of empathy. Can we ever truly believe that a piece of silicon, a network of switches, has an inner life, a quiet symphony of its own? Or will they forever remain in the Chinese room? Brilliant mimes of a consciousness they can never truly possess. And as we face the dawn of this new era, a future where minds may be built, not born, we must also face the ultimate question of consciousness. What happens when it all comes to an end? We have imagined a consciousness that could be built, a mind of silicon and sand. But now we must face the ultimate and most personal question of all. What happens when the quiet symphony of consciousness ends? What becomes of the mind when the body, its faithful instrument, falls silent? We have explored the beginning and the middle of the story, but every story must have a final chapter. And this final chapter, whether we face it with hope, with fear, or with quiet acceptance, remains the most profound mystery. From a purely scientific perspective, the answer is stark and simple. The body is a biological machine, and consciousness is a property of that machine. When the machine breaks down, when the neurons stop firing and the chemical cascades cease, the consciousness ends. It is like a flame that goes out, not a light that moves from one candle to another. The memories, the feelings, the unique tapestry of thoughts that made up you are gone. They are not transferred to another place. They are simply no more. This is the principle of the conservation of energy applied to the human body. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed. The energy that powered your thoughts and feelings does not vanish. It is transformed into heat, into the slow, quiet process of decay, a return to the earth from which you came. The atoms that made up your body, the carbon, the oxygen, the hydrogen, will not be destroyed. They will be recycled, becoming a part of the soil, of the grass, of a new flower that blooms in the spring. In this view, your consciousness is not lost, but transformed. Your essence, the energy that made you, returns to the great universal current, a single, humble drop in a boundless ocean. But this is a cold comfort for the mind that wants to believe in more. And so, we turn to the whispers from the other side, the quiet promises of philosophy and faith. What if consciousness is not just a product of the body, but something that uses the body as a temporary home? What if the brain is indeed just a receiver, and when the receiver is destroyed, the signal simply moves on? This is the core of a theory known as the information field theory, which suggests that consciousness is a non-physical field that carries information and is stored and processed by the brain. When the brain ceases to function, the information is not destroyed. It simply returns to the field from which it came, a single story rejoining the great library of all stories. A little known and fascinating scientific thought experiment related to this is the Novikov self-consistency principle. While this principle is more related to time travel and paradoxes, it offers a poetic and peculiar way of thinking about the end of things. It suggests that if a person were to travel back in time, they could not change the past in a way that would create a paradox. The universe would find a way to maintain its self-consistency. What if consciousness works in a similar way? What if the end of one's life is not an erasure, but a return to a state of consistency with the whole? A final, beautiful integration back into the cosmic order. This is pure speculation, of course, but it's a reminder that the universe has a strange and beautiful logic that often defies our simple understanding. The truth is, we don't know for sure. The end of consciousness remains the final and most impenetrable wall of our understanding. And this wall is not to be feared, but to be contemplated with a quiet sense of wonder. The fact that we have this brief, brilliant flicker of consciousness, this fragile and beautiful awareness, is a miracle. It is a moment of light against the vast, silent backdrop of the void. And perhaps the beauty of that light is not in its duration, but in its existence at all. The thought that consciousness may be a final, irreversible act is not a reason for despair. but a reason to cherish every moment of our brief, brilliant time here. And as we consider the ultimate end, we must also consider the choices we make along the way. We must ask ourselves if the story we are living is one of our own making, or if it is a pre-written play. This is the ancient, restless debate of free will, a question that has haunted the conscious mind for centuries. Our next part of the journey will take us into this labyrinth, a path with no clear beginning or end. We have contemplated the possibility of a consciousness that returns to a great, universal field at the end of its journey. But what about the journey itself? Is it a path we walk by our own choice, or is it a predetermined road? This is the ancient, restless debate of free will versus determinism, a labyrinth that has no easy exit. It's a question that strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a conscious being. Do our thoughts and choices truly belong to us? Or are they simply the predictable outcome of physical processes, a complex set of dominoes that were set in motion at the beginning of time? Determinism is the idea that every event, including our every thought and action, is the inevitable result of a chain of prior causes. In this view, our conscious mind is not the author of our story, but merely the reader. Every decision you have ever made, from what you ate for breakfast this morning to what you will think about tomorrow, was already decided by the physical state of the universe a moment before you were born. Your feeling of making a choice is a beautiful and convincing illusion, a product of your brain's need to tell a coherent story. This is a cold and humbling thought. It suggests that our consciousness is not a driver, but a passenger, a quiet witness to a story that has already been written. But the feeling of free will is so powerful. It's the feeling that you could, at this very moment, stand up and walk away, that you could choose to think about a different topic. This feeling, this inner sense of agency, is central to our conscious experience. If it's an illusion, it's one of the most magnificent tricks our brains have ever played. And what would be the purpose of such a trick? Perhaps it's a necessary one. Perhaps the illusion of free will is what allows us to learn, to grow, and to feel a sense of responsibility for our actions. Without it, our quiet symphony would lose its melody, and our lives would feel like a series of random, disconnected events. A little-known fact that complicates this debate comes from the world of neuroscience. In the 1980s, a scientist named Benjamin Libet conducted a now-famous experiment. He asked participants to flex their wrist at a time of their choosing and to note the exact moment they consciously decided to do so. He found that a burst of brain activity, a readiness potential, occurred before the conscious decision to act. The brain, in a way, had already made the decision before the conscious mind was even aware of it. This suggests that our conscious choices may not be the cause of our actions, but rather a kind of after-the-fact acknowledgement of what our brain has already decided. It's a fascinating and unsettling finding, a quiet whisper that suggests our consciousness is not the source of our will, but a kind of witness to its unfolding. This raises a deep and humbling question that science cannot answer. Does the readiness potential prove that free will is an illusion? Or does it simply show that our conscious mind is not the only part of our brain that is involved in making decisions? Perhaps our conscious mind and our unconscious mind work together in a quiet and intricate dance, a partnership we have yet to fully understand. The truth is, we don't know for sure. The labyrinth of free will and determinism has no clear exit. It is a puzzle that we may never solve, a beautiful contradiction that is at the very core of our conscious experience. Our conscious mind feels free, even if the universe, in all its determined splendor, suggests that it is not. And as we stand in this philosophical labyrinth, we can now widen our gaze once more, looking beyond the human and the biological to a new, even grander mystery. We will consider the possibility of a consciousness that is not of this world, a universal song that may be sung by beings and forms we cannot even begin to imagine. We have navigated the quiet labyrinth of free will, a puzzle that resides at the heart of our own minds. But now we must lift our gaze from ourselves and look outward into the vast, silent darkness of the cosmos. For if consciousness is not a singular human trait, but a universal song, then it may be sung by beings and forms we cannot even begin to imagine. This is the contemplation of the universal song's final note, the possibility of alien or non-human consciousness. For centuries, we have searched the skies for life, listening for a signal in the static, a quiet whisper in the cosmic void, and we have found nothing. But perhaps we are searching for the wrong kind of song. We assume that alien consciousness, if it exists, would be something like our own. We imagine beings that think, feel, and communicate in a way we can understand. But what if consciousness can manifest in forms so alien, so strange, that we wouldn't even recognize it? Think of a hypothetical form of life that is not based on carbon, but on silicon. A mind that processes information not with electrical signals, but with light. Its thoughts would not be fleeting, but would travel at the speed of light. Its awareness would not be a single stream, but a vast, parallel computation happening at once. Or imagine a consciousness that exists in a great diffuse gas cloud, a collective mind that is born and dies over millions of years, its thoughts as slow and deliberate as the drift of a galaxy. We would look at it and see nothing but an empty nebula, but it might be thinking, dreaming, and contemplating its own existence on a scale we cannot comprehend. This is the central problem of exobiology, the science of life beyond Earth. Our search is limited by our own biology and our own conscious experience. We are like a blind man searching for a painting. We can only feel the frame and the canvas, but we can't see the colors or the grand design. We listen for radio signals, but what if alien consciousness communicates not through sound, but through gravitational waves, a quiet song that bends the very fabric of space-time? What if they live in the hearts of stars, or in the cold, dark depths of a gas giant? The truth is, we don't know for sure. The silence from the cosmos may not be a sign of a lack of life, but a sign of our own profound limitations. The universe might be teeming with consciousness, but we are simply not on the right wavelength to hear the song. A fascinating scientific idea that adds to this quiet contemplation is the concept of a Dyson sphere. This is a hypothetical megastructure that an advanced alien civilization could build around its star to capture its energy. It's a vast, artificial shell that would completely enclose the star. If we were to see such a thing from Earth, we wouldn't see a star, but an object giving off heat in the infrared spectrum. This is a powerful metaphor for our search. We are looking for something that shines, but a truly advanced civilization might have already turned off its light, wrapping itself in a silent, energy-efficient shell. Their consciousness would be in the dark, a quiet hum that we would never be able to detect with our current tools. This raises a quiet and humbling question. Is our consciousness, with its fleeting thoughts and its fragile body, just a fleeting primitive note in a vast, cosmic symphony? Is it a stage we must pass through on the way to a different, more durable, and more expansive form of awareness? The truth is, we don't know. The universe is a vast, ancient, and deeply mysterious place, and the final note of the universal song, if it is being sung at all, may be one that is too high, or too low, or too quiet for our ears to ever hear. With this thought, we have reached the end of our intellectual journey. We have traveled from the quiet symphony of the self to the silent chorus of the cosmos. And now, we must turn our attention back to the here and now, to the gentle tide of awareness that is carrying you to the shore of sleep. We have reached the end of our journey, a long and winding road through the very nature of what it means to be aware. We have explored consciousness as an emergent property, a quiet symphony of selves, and as a theatrical performance in the dark, silent space of the brain. We have traveled back in time to witness its first flickers in the primordial soup, and we have peered into the strange internal worlds of our dreams. We have seen how our minds sculpt the river of time, and how the act of observation might shape reality itself in the quantum void. The mirror of self-awareness showed us the beautiful, fluid mystery of the I, and we have felt the deep, unseen connections that bind us all together, from the smallest ant to the largest starling murmuration. We have considered the possibility of a mind without a body and the mind that might one day be born of silicon and sand. And we have stood before the ultimate mystery of the end, the quiet, final note of the universal song. And now, as we gently drift to the end of our story, it's time to let all of those thoughts go. It's time to bring our awareness back to this quiet, simple moment. The grand questions and the cosmic mysteries have done their work. They have soothed the restless mind, not with answers, but with a sense of wonder. They have shown us that we are a part of something far larger and far more beautiful than we can ever fully comprehend. There is a great comfort in that, a quiet peace in knowing that we are not meant to understand it all. We are simply meant to be a part of it. So, let's turn our attention back to the here and now. The gentle pressure of the surface you're resting on, the quiet rhythm of your own breath, the soft stillness of the air around you. The universe has been speaking to us in whispers and in grand, cosmic pronouncements. But the most important song of all is the one you are quietly singing in this very moment. It is the song of your own awareness, a beautiful and fragile thing that is a part of the universe's great, ongoing symphony. I'd like to gently ask one last time, where is the place you're staying now? The time in that place, at this very moment. How is it flowing? Just notice it. No need to answer, just to be aware. Let that awareness be a soft blanket, a gentle tide that slowly, softly pulls you out to sea. And as you feel your body grow heavy and your mind begin to quiet, remember that consciousness, for all its mysteries, is a gift, and the universe, for all its chaos, is holding you. Sleep well, my companion. Wherever and whenever you are, sweet dreams.